loudest voices rarely build anything. Think about that for a moment. The people constantly updating everyone about their plans, their goals, their next big move. Where are they a year later? Still talking, still planning, still announcing. Meanwhile, someone you barely hear from has completely transformed their life. This isn't a coincidence. It's a pattern you've probably noticed, but never fully understood. The real builders, the ones who actually create lasting change, operate differently. They don't broadcast their intentions. They don't seek validation for their plans. They simply disappear into their work and emerge with results. Here's what you're about to discover: how to harness the power of privacy, how to turn inward when the world pulls you outward, how to build something real while everyone else builds an image. This isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about protecting your energy, your focus, and your process from the friction of other people's opinions, doubt, and distraction. Over the next hour and a half, we'll walk through 10 principles that will rewire how you approach growth, discipline, and achievement. Each chapter reveals a different dimension of quiet power, the strength that comes not from telling people who you're becoming, but from actually becoming it. You'll learn why announcing drains momentum, why private repetition beats public performance, why the gap between intention and execution closes fastest in silence. By the end, you'll understand something most people never grasp. Your transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs attention. Your attention. Undivided, uncompromised, unwavering. So let's begin. Turn off notifications. Find somewhere you won't be interrupted. And let's explore what happens when you stop telling the world what you're doing and start actually doing it. Chapter 1. The shift that changes everything. There's a moment that separates before from after. A moment when you stop needing to share and start needing to build. Most people never experience this shift. They stay locked in the cycle of announcement and abandonment, talking about change, but never embodying it. The shift happens internally, silently, without fanfare. One day you realize that every time you've told someone about a goal, you felt a burst of satisfaction, as if saying it out loud gave you credit for doing it. Your brain released the same reward chemicals it would have if you'd actually made progress. You got the applause without the work, the validation without the transformation. And then what happened? The goal faded. The motivation evaporated. Because you already received your reward. This is the trap of premature declaration. When you announce your intentions, you satisfy the craving for recognition before you've earned it. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between talking about doing something and actually doing it. Both feel like progress, but only one is real. The shift happens when you recognize this pattern and make a different choice. You feel the urge to share, to update, to get feedback, and you don't. You sit with the discomfort of being unknown in your pursuit. You let the energy that would have gone into explanation flow into execution instead. This is when everything changes. Suddenly, your relationship with the work itself transforms. You're not doing it to have something to talk about. You're doing it because it matters to you. The work becomes its own reward. The repetition becomes meditation. The progress becomes proof, but only to you. People around you might notice you've gone quiet. They might ask what you're up to. And here's the test. Can you smile and say, "Just staying busy," without elaborating? Can you protect the sacred space of your process from casual conversation? Most can't. They crack under the pressure of silence. They need to be seen, understood, validated. And in seeking that validation, they trade momentum for attention. But you're different now. You've made the shift. You understand that the person you're becoming doesn't need to be announced. It needs to be cultivated, day after day, hour after hour, in the privacy of your own commitment. This is where real power begins, not in the declaration, but in the decision, not in the promise, but in the practice, not in the image, but in the identity forming quietly beneath the surface. The world doesn't need to know what you're building. It will see it when it's done. Keep building quietly. Your silence is your strength. Chapter 2. The hours no one sees. What do you do when no one's watching? That's the only question that matters. Not what you post. Not what you say. Not how you present yourself when there's an audience. What do you do in the gaps between visibility? The truth is, most of your life happens off camera. Most of your decisions are made in private. Most of your habits are formed when you're alone. And those invisible moments, those are the ones building your future. Think about the person you admire most, the one with the discipline, the results, the presence. You see their finished work. You see their polished presentation. What you don't see are the 5 a.m. mornings, the late nights, the repetitions they did until muscle memory took over, the drafts they deleted, the attempts they repeated until one finally worked. You see the outcome. They lived the process. This is the reality they don't tell you. Excellence is built in private. Mastery is forged in solitude. Transformation happens where no one can comment, critique, or congratulate. Because here's what happens when you work publicly. You start performing. You start shaping your effort to look good rather than be good. You choose the flashy project over the foundational one. You optimize for optics instead of outcomes. But when you work in private, you're free to be terrible, to struggle, to fail without an audience documenting your mistakes. You can focus purely on improvement without the friction of managing perceptions. Those early morning hours when everyone else is asleep, that's your edge. Those late nights when you could be scrolling, but you're studying instead, that's your advantage. Those moments when you choose the hard task over the easy distraction, that's your future taking shape. No one sees it happening. No one applauds. No one validates the choice. But the choice still counts. Actually, it counts more. Because you're doing it for you, not for them. This is how you build something real. Not by showing up when it's convenient or visible, but by showing up when it's difficult and private. Consistency in the dark builds capability in the light. Every rep in private becomes strength in public. Every hour alone becomes confidence in company. Every small decision no one witnessed becomes character. Everyone respects. So guard those private hours. Protect them from interruption and invasion. Let them be messy, experimental, imperfect. Let them be yours. Because what you do there, in those unseen moments, is who you're becoming. Strength built in shadows. Power forged in solitude. Chapter 3. Production over performance. There's a difference between looking productive and being productive, between appearing committed and actually committing, between performing growth and producing results. Most people have become experts at the performance. They've mastered the art of looking busy, sounding motivated, seeming focused. The right posts, the right language, the right aesthetic. But strip away the presentation. And what's left? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Applause feels better than progress. Recognition feels better than repetition. Attention feels better than accomplishment, at least in the short term. Your brain is wired for social reward. When someone likes your post about your goal, you get a hit of dopamine. When someone comments encouragement, you feel validated. When people watch your journey, you feel significant. And there's nothing wrong with that, until it becomes the point. Until you're working for the response rather than the result. Until the performance replaces the production. You know this is happening when you spend more time documenting than doing, when you craft updates before you create outcomes, when you're more concerned with how it looks than how it works. The shift you need to make is simple but difficult. Stop optimizing for approval and start optimizing for improvement. Stop asking, "Will this impress people?" and start asking, "Will this advance my skill?" Choose the unglamorous work, the foundational practice, the basic repetition that doesn't photograph well, but builds competence. Choose boring consistency over exciting inconsistency. Production happens in private. It's repetitive. It's methodical. It requires patience and persistence without immediate payoff. You don't get points for each small step. You don't get celebrated for showing up again. You just do the work and trust the compound effect. And here's what's fascinating. When you stop performing and start producing, the results speak louder than any announcement ever could. When you actually build something valuable, you don't need to convince anyone of its worth. The value is self-evident. People who perform are exhausting. They need constant reassurance, constant attention, constant validation that they're on the right path. People who produce are calm. They know what they're doing is working because they can measure it. They don't need your opinion because they have their data. So ask yourself, am I trying to look like someone who's serious? Or am I actually being serious? Am I curating an image of dedication? Or am I demonstrating dedication through daily execution? The answer reveals everything. Real producers don't have time for performance. They're too busy producing. They're not documenting the process because they're immersed in it. They're not explaining their vision because they're executing it. And one day, without announcement or fanfare, their work appears. Finished, functional, undeniable. Let the outcomes speak. Progress is the only proof. Chapter 4. The privacy of repetition. Your habits are your destiny, not your goals, not your intentions, not your declarations. Your habits, the small actions you repeat when no one's keeping score. And here's the key. Habits need privacy to take root. When you make your habits public, they become performances. You start doing them for the streak, the accountability, the social pressure. You start tracking them so others can see your consistency. And the moment you break the streak or miss a day, you feel like you've failed publicly. This external pressure can work short-term, but it rarely builds lasting transformation because you're not developing internal motivation. You're dependent on external validation. True habits are private agreements with yourself. They're the things you do because you've decided they matter, not because someone's watching. They're the choices you make consistently, regardless of who knows about them. Think about the habits that define you, not the ones you talk about, the ones you actually do. The way you start your morning, the questions you ask yourself, the standards you hold in private. These aren't performances. They're your operating system, and they compound silently. Every day, every week, every month, they're shaping your capabilities, your character, your trajectory. This is why you need to protect your habits from opinion. When you tell someone about a new practice you're building, they immediately have thoughts, suggestions, concerns, stories about why it might not work or how they tried something similar. Their input creates friction. Suddenly, you're defending your choice instead of executing it. You're explaining instead of doing. And that energy you're spending on justification is energy you're not spending on action. Keep your habits private, at least in the beginning, at least until they're so ingrained that outside opinion can't shake them. Let the practice become part of your identity before you invite commentary. Because here's what happens when a habit is truly yours. You don't think about it. You don't debate it. You don't need motivation for it. You just do it. The same way you brush your teeth or lock your door. It's automatic. It's identity. And that only happens through repetition. Hundreds of repetitions. Thousands. Without interruption. Without negotiation. Without explanation. So when you're building something new into your life, guard it. Don't announce it. Don't track it publicly. Don't turn it into content. Just do it, day after day, until it's no longer something you do, but something you are. Months from now, someone might notice a change in you. They might ask what you've been doing differently, and you'll smile because you barely remember making the decision. It's just who you are now. That's the power of private repetition. That's the legacy of protected habits. Repetition builds identity. Privacy protects process. Chapter 5. Daily execution. Without justification. Every day you make a choice. Explain or execute. Defend or deliver. Talk about what you're going to do or quietly do it. Most people choose explanation. They need others to understand their journey, appreciate their effort, recognize their commitment. They can't just act. They need to narrate the action. But here's the problem with constant justification. It drains the energy you need for execution. Every time you explain your process, you're using mental resources that could fuel your practice. Every time you defend your choices, you're engaging in friction that slows your momentum. Execution requires focus. Justification requires attention. Management. You can't optimize for both. Think about how much time you've spent making people understand why you're doing something. Convincing skeptics, reassuring worried family members, proving to doubters that your path makes sense. Now imagine if you'd used that time just walking the path. How much further would you be? The reality is, most people don't need to understand your decisions. They need to respect them. And respect comes not from explanation, but from results. When your life improves, when your skills develop, when your work speaks for itself, people respect that, whether they understand it or not. So here's the practice. Act daily without explaining. Make your choices. Execute your plan. Maintain your standards. And when someone questions it, simply smile and keep moving. Why are you doing it that way? Just trying something new. Why don't you join us? I've got something else going on. When will you be back to normal? We'll see. Short answers. Polite deflection. No justification. No defense. Just quiet continuation. This isn't about being secretive or rude. It's about conserving your energy for what matters. Every conversation you avoid is energy you preserve. Every explanation you skip is focus you maintain. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop justifying, people stop questioning. They realize you're committed in a way that doesn't need their approval. They sense that you're building something real. And often, they respect the boundary and leave you alone. But even if they don't, it doesn't matter. Because you're not measuring success by whether people understand. You're measuring it by whether you're making progress. And progress happens in the doing, not the discussing. So every morning, decide, what will I execute today? Not announce, not discuss, execute. And then do it. Without commentary, without updates, without proof. Just you, your commitment, and another day of quiet work. Every quiet step compounds. Action speaks. Explanation weakens. Chapter 6. The patience of depth. You're not behind. You're building depth. This is hard to believe when everyone around you seems to be moving faster, getting results quicker, achieving more visibly. You look at their progress and wonder if your approach is too slow, too methodical, too private. But here's what you're not seeing. They're building width. You're building depth. They're accumulating superficial gains. You're developing fundamental capability. They're optimizing for speed. You're optimizing for permanence. And permanence takes time. Think about a tree. A young sapling can shoot up quickly. You can measure its growth week by week. But its roots are shallow. The first strong wind knocks it over. The first drought kills it. Meanwhile, an oak tree grows slowly, almost imperceptibly. For years, it looks like not much is happening above ground, but beneath the surface, it's developing a root system that will support centuries of growth. You're the oak. And right now, while everyone else is celebrating visible growth, you're developing roots. Deep roots. Roots of discipline. Roots of skill. Roots of character. This takes patience, because depth doesn't photograph well. It doesn't make good content. It doesn't impress casual observers. But when the storms come, and they always come, depth is what keeps you standing. When trends change, when advantages disappear, when external conditions shift, the people with depth adapt. The people with only width collapse. So, trust slow progress. Trust the quiet hours of fundamental practice. Trust the repetition that feels monotonous. Trust the process that doesn't generate excitement. Because you're not building for applause. You're building for longevity. You're not optimizing for the short-term win. You're optimizing for the long-term capability. And here's the truth about slow growth. It's exponential, not linear. The tree that grows slowly for 10 years becomes massive in year 15. The skill you develop patiently becomes effortless mastery later. The foundation you lay carefully supports achievements you can't yet imagine. So when you feel slow, remember, slow is deep. Slow is thorough. Slow is sustainable. You're not racing anyone. You're building something that will outlast the race. People who rush burn out. People who perform fade out. People who seek quick wins max out. But people who trust depth, they keep going. They keep growing. They keep evolving long after everyone else has plateaued. So be patient with yourself. Be patient with the process. Trust that your consistency compounds. Trust that your daily decisions accumulate into fundamental transformation. You're not behind. You're exactly where depth forms. Consistency beats speed. Depth outlasts width. Chapter 7. Filtering the noise. Your attention is your most valuable asset. Not your time, not your talent, your attention. Because where your attention goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, your life grows. Or deteriorates, depending on what you're feeding with your focus. And here's the challenge. The world is engineered to steal your attention. Every platform, every notification, every person with an opinion, they all want a piece of your focus. They need it. Their survival depends on it. but your transformation depends on protecting it. Think about how much of your attention leaks away in a typical day. The scroll, the conversations that go nowhere, the drama that has nothing to do with you. The opinions of people who don't know your context. The noise that feels important, but changes nothing. Now imagine if you reclaimed all that attention. If you redirected it entirely toward what you're building. How different would your trajectory be? Filtering the noise isn't about disconnecting from the world. It's about connecting more deeply with what matters. It's about choosing signal over static. It's about protecting your mental environment the way you'd protect your physical one. You wouldn't let strangers walk into your home and rearrange your furniture. Why let strangers' opinions walk into your mind and rearrange your beliefs? This requires ruthlessness. You have to become comfortable saying no. No to invitations that don't align. No to conversations that drain. No to content that agitates without educating. No to people who demand your energy but give nothing back. Every no to noise is a yes to signal. Every boundary you set is space you create for depth. And here's what you'll discover. Most noise doesn't matter. Most opinions are projections. Most urgency is manufactured. Most drama is optional. When you stop engaging with it, you realize how little of it affected your actual life. The people building real things don't have time for noise. They're not in the comments debating. They're not consuming endless content. They're not tracking what everyone else is doing. They're too busy creating to worry about critiquing. So, audit your attention. Look at where it's going. Be honest about what's earning your focus. Then, ruthlessly eliminate everything that isn't serving your growth. Unfollow the accounts that make you feel less than. Leave the groups that breed negativity. Stop the conversations that loop without resolution. Remove the inputs that agitate without adding value. And in the space you create, invite the signal. The content that teaches. The conversations that challenge. The solitude that clarifies. The work that demands your full presence. This is how you build clarity in a noisy world. This is how you maintain focus when everything's designed to distract you. Energy goes where attention lives. Guard your focus. Filter everything else. Chapter 8. The Forge of Solitude. Pain is not a problem. It's a process. The hard days aren't setbacks. They're setup. The struggle you want to avoid is the very thing forging your strength. But you have to experience it alone. When things get difficult, the instinct is to reach out, to vent, to process out loud, to get someone to tell you it's going to be okay. And sometimes that helps. But sometimes it dilutes. Sometimes you need to sit with the difficulty, alone, in silence, and let it reshape you. This is what most people avoid. They can't stand the discomfort of being alone with their struggle. They need to externalize it, share it, get validation for feeling it. They need witnesses to their pain. But here's the truth. The deepest growth happens in private pain. When you're alone with your doubt, your fear, your exhaustion, and you choose to continue anyway. No one applauding, no one encouraging, no one even knowing you're struggling. Just you and the decision. Quit or continue. Comfort or growth. The easy path or the forging path. And when you choose growth, when you choose to continue despite having no external motivation, something fundamental shifts inside you. You discover your true capacity, not the version of you that performs for others, not the version that needs encouragement to show up, the version that has no choice but to rely on itself. That's the version that becomes unshakable. Solitude doesn't weaken you. It reveals you. And then it refines you. The things you can't say out loud, you have to process internally. The doubts you can't share, you have to resolve yourself. The pain you can't offload, you have to transform. And in that transformation, you become someone new, someone stronger, someone who doesn't need external conditions to be favorable before taking action. Think about the hardest thing you've been through, the period where everything felt impossible, where you didn't know if you could make it, but you didn't have the option to quit, so you kept going. What did that do to you? Not in the moment, in the months after. You became more resilient, more confident, more capable, because you proved to yourself that you could endure. That's the gift of solitary struggle. That's the forge of private pain. It doesn't destroy you. It reconstructs you into someone who trusts themselves, someone who knows their breaking point is further than they imagined. So when the hard days come, and they will, don't rush to escape the discomfort. Don't immediately seek relief. Sit with it. Let it work on you. Let it reveal what you're made of. Let it forge something stronger. Because the person emerging from that fire is the person who can handle what's next. And what's next is always bigger than what's now. Hard days are training. Struggle becomes strength. Chapter 9. The language of results. At some point, you stop talking and start showing. You stop explaining and start evidencing. You stop promising and start proving. This is when your journey becomes undeniable. People can doubt your words. They can question your intentions. They can dismiss your plans. But they can't argue with results. Results speak a language that requires no translation. Results end debates that words prolong. And here's the beautiful thing. When your results speak, you don't have to. You don't need to convince anyone of your dedication. They see it in your output. You don't need to explain your process. They see it in your progress. You don't need to defend your choices. They see validation in your outcomes. This is the quiet power of demonstrated competence. You're not claiming to be good at something. You're just good at it. The evidence is irrefutable. The work stands on its own. And that changes how people see you. Suddenly, you're not the person who talks about change. You're the person who embodies it. But here's what's important. You don't do the work to create this perception. You do the work because it matters to you. The results are a byproduct of genuine commitment, not a performance designed to impress. That's the difference people can sense. Authentic achievement has a different quality than manufactured success. Real growth feels different than curated growth. When you've actually done the work, there's a groundedness to you. A calm confidence. You don't need to assert your capability because you've lived it. You don't need to prove yourself because you've already proved yourself. To yourself. And ironically, this is when people start asking you how you did it. The same people who doubted, dismissed, or ignored you when you were building. They want to know your secret now that you're successful. And here's where you make another choice. Do you explain or do you protect? Because the truth is, the real answer won't satisfy them. The real answer is consistent daily execution in private for months or years without recognition or reward. The real answer is, I stopped talking and started doing. The real answer is, I worked when no one was watching. But they want a shortcut, a hack, a secret strategy, something easier than discipline. So you smile. You give them something general, and you protect the sacred simplicity of your process, because it's not a secret. It's just not glamorous. And people who want glamour aren't ready for the work anyway. Let your results do the talking, not for others, for you. So that when doubt creeps in, you have evidence. When fear whispers, you're not capable, you have proof. When the world questions your path, you have outcomes. Results are the ultimate validation. And the beauty is, you don't need to broadcast them. The right people notice. The right opportunities emerge. The right momentum builds. You don't need to prove. You need to do. Let the work make the noise. Chapter 10. The Victory of Silence. There's a different kind of power in being unreachable. Not physically unreachable, mentally, emotionally, energetically, unreachable to the noise, the opinions, the distractions. This is the final level, the quiet victory. Most people never get here. They spend their lives broadcasting, explaining, defending, performing. They're always available to others' perceptions, always adjusting based on external feedback, always engaged in the endless conversation about who they are and what they're doing. But there's another way, a way of moving through the world with such clarity about your path that outside noise doesn't penetrate. This isn't arrogance. It's alignment. You're so clear about your values, your vision, your process, that other people's opinions simply don't factor in. Not because you're dismissive, but because you're decided. You've chosen your direction. You've committed to your discipline. You're walking your path. And commentary from the sidelines, supportive or critical, doesn't change your next step. This is what it means to move silently, not secretly, not sneakily, but with a quiet confidence that doesn't need acknowledgement. You're not hiding what you're doing. You're just not announcing it. You're not avoiding people. You're just not performing for them. And here's what happens when you reach this level. Peace. Real peace. Because you're no longer in a negotiation with the world about your worth, your path, your pace. You've settled it internally. And that internal settlement creates external calm. People might wonder about you. They might ask where you've been, what you've been doing, why you're different. And you'll answer simply, without elaboration, because the elaborate explanation isn't necessary. The transformation speaks for itself. This is the victory. You've built something real without needing to document the build. You've transformed without needing to narrate the transformation. You've won by every metric that matters to you, and you don't need anyone else's scorecard. And now, from this place of groundedness, you move differently. You make decisions faster because you're not considering everyone's opinion. You take action more boldly because you're not worried about looking foolish. You stay consistent more easily because external circumstances don't shake your internal commitment. The silent builder, the quiet achiever, the person who doesn't announce but simply arrives, with results, with capability, with presence. This is who you're becoming, not someone who talks about the journey, someone who completes it, not someone who promises transformation, someone who embodies it. And the most powerful part? You don't need this validated. You know what you've done. You know what you've become. You know what you're capable of. That knowledge is enough. That proof is sufficient. So keep moving, keep building, keep refining. Without declaration, without explanation, without the need for witnesses. Because the ultimate victory is internal. It's knowing that you've done the work no one saw, that you've become someone you respect, that you've kept your word to yourself. No declarations, no noise, just presence, peace, and power. So we've come full circle. We started with a paradox. The loudest voices rarely build anything. And now you understand why. Because building requires focus, and focus requires silence, and silence requires the courage to let your work speak instead of your words. What you've learned isn't complicated. It's just uncommon. In a world designed to make you broadcast every intention and perform every moment, choosing to build privately is radical, but it's also necessary. If you want real transformation, if you want lasting results, if you want to become someone of substance rather than someone of appearance, you now understand the power of quiet work, the strength that forms in unseen hours, the confidence that comes from private consistency, the clarity that emerges when you stop defending and start doing. You understand that your habits are your legacy, and they need privacy to root deeply, that your attention is your power, and you must filter what drains it. That struggle in solitude forges strength nothing else can build. You understand that patience builds depth. That daily execution needs no justification. That results speak louder than any promise. And most importantly, you understand that your transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs commitment. Your commitment, given daily, repeated quietly, protected fiercely. So here's what comes next. You close this, and you begin. Or you continue. Without announcement, without fanfare, just the next right action in the sequence of 1,000 right actions. The world will notice eventually. Not because you told them what you were doing, but because they'll see what you became. They'll see the discipline, the skill, the presence, the results, and they'll wonder when it happened, how it happened, and you'll smile because you know. It happened in the quiet hours, in the private practice, in the moments no one saw. It happened because you stopped telling people what you were going to do and simply did it. Day after day, week after week, month after month, without recognition, without applause, without proof that anyone was watching. because you weren't doing it for them. You were doing it for you. And that's the victory that matters most. Not the public acknowledgement, not the external validation, but the internal knowing that you've become who you decided to be. So go now. Build in silence. Execute without explanation. Transform without testimony. Let the gap between who you are and who you're becoming close, quietly, steadily, inevitably. Stop waiting for permission. Stop seeking approval. Stop needing witnesses. Just begin. And when you want to announce it, when you feel that urge to share, to update, to get feedback, channel that energy into one more rep, one more hour, one more day of quiet work. Because every time you choose silence over announcement, you're strengthening the muscle of self-reliance. Every time you choose execution over explanation, you're deepening your capacity for focus. Every time you choose private work over public performance, you're building something real. And one day, maybe 6 months from now, maybe a year, maybe longer, someone will look at you differently. They'll notice something has changed. The way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you show up, the results you produce. And they'll ask you what happened. And you'll have a choice. You can give them the elaborate explanation, the full breakdown of every technique and tactic. Or you can protect the simplicity of what actually worked. You stopped talking and started building. You withdrew your energy from performance and invested it in production. You trusted the process when no one was watching. You kept your word to yourself when breaking it would have been easier. That's the path. That's the way. That's the power that changes everything. Not what you announce, what you do. Not what you promise, what you build. Not what you say you'll become, who you actually become. So take this with you. The world doesn't need to know what you're building. It will see it when it's built. The world doesn't need to understand your process. It will respect your results. The world doesn't need updates on your journey. It will notice your arrival. Until then, stay quiet. Stay focused. Stay committed. Let your silence be your strategy. Let your consistency be your secret. Let your results be your announcement. Build behind closed doors. Transform in private. Win in your own time. And remember, the loudest voices rarely build anything. But the quietest builders, they build everything. Now go. Disappear into your work and emerge with undeniable proof of what focused silence can create. You don't need to tell the world what you're doing. The world will tell itself.